The United Nations has done a survey, and out of that survey came that 26 million people in the world use methamphetamine. And you're like, wow, that is a lot of people. And in the United States, it's 1.6 million people that are addicted to these drugs. And you're like, wow, if you see the aftermath, what it does to people, and what the results are for the loved ones that are watching as this is taking place, it is absolutely devastating. Is there a way when you're an addict or when you have a loved one that they can get out of this, as this is such a high risk drug that is hard to remove yourself from? What is it that you can do? And is there hope for those around you, or is there hope for you? I have a special guest for you today, Pastor Brandon Stearns, that actually used to be a meth addict and has the answer in how you too or your loved one could be set free from this basically horror. Brandon, thank you for joining the show.
Thank you.
Now, you grew up as a Christian. You accepted Jesus at the age of 12.
Yeah.
Why meth?
Well, for me, personally, I was kind of trying to be somebody that I really wasn't inside, and so was never really secure with who I was. So I was always trying to be a different person, and that's one of the things that drugs and alcohol will do, is just once you take it, it makes you feel invincible, it makes you feel strong, it makes you feel secure. And so I got wrapped in it very quickly, but I was always trying to be somebody that I wasn't, and I think that's kind of what got me into it in the beginning, you know.
Now, I read somewhere that once you start using, there is something that you're running after that you want again and again and again. What is that?
Well, studies say, when I went to programs, that the first 8 minutes of the first high, that's just the very first 8 minutes, is what you chase the rest of your life to feel again, because it releases something in your body and in your brain that causes you just to be completely full of just a rush. And that's what you chase, is that original feeling, that original high that you get. And so it just gripped me from the very first time that I took the drug.
And what was that feeling that you liked so much?
For me, it was just that real strong, real adrenaline, invincible, tough, unstoppable. You know, it brought me out of my insecurity and made me feel strong and secure. And so I think that that's what it was something that made me feel secure, which was really, you know, what God was supposed to do in my life. And
now, it says something that once you start taking meth, or crank basically, that you need more and more and more. Doesn't that get kind of expensive?
yeah, absolutely. And everybody's a little bit different, but you always want to get more and more and more. Your body does create a tolerance to it, but it does get expensive, and it's so addictive that, you know, once you want it, you figure out a way to get it.
Wow, really?
You know, you're in bondage. So.
Now, you actually ended up using so much you overdosed twice and almost died.
One time actually I had overdosed, and I went to the hospital and had about 220 over 110 blood pressure, and they told me that if you don't bear down and make your body start over, you bear down and it makes your heart reset, that I was going to code. And then they finally gave me a shot to, you know, to deactivate the drug and save my life. So.
Wow. And still at that point, you could not stop. Weren't you scared? Were you aware? Or there's such thing as denial. Were you still in denial at that point?
I was absolutely in denial. I was in a place, for me, where when I was so insane in what I was doing, I was scared when I would take it, afraid of having a heart attack. But when I would take it, I would pray and ask God, don't let me die like this. And so I was literally praying before I would take the drug and ask God to just be merciful to me.
That's nuts.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You're destroying your life and saying, God, I know I'm wrong, but I need this right now. I know, you know, I used to be an addict. I had an eating disorder for 17 years, and I was not aware I had a problem. And at the end, I thought I had rights to do the vomiting and all that stuff, to do the bulimia, because my anxiety told me I needed it so badly and I could not live without it. And for me, it was all an issue of control. I had to be in control. Was that it for you as well?
For me, I just think that, I just was always going after what it felt like when I was on it, and it gripped me. And I I just don't know the exact answer to that.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
I just know that when I took it, I was hooked, and I, from that point in my life, everything was about me. Everything was about how I wanted to get high on drugs. I didn't care who I hurt, you know, and I was putting my family through hell and losing jobs. And I came from a very good family. And so from the first time at 19 years old when I took that drug, it started almost a 10-year downhill spiral that almost took my life multiple times.
Wow. You get to the point that you're like, I can do this, you know. You
Yeah.
get to that point because, you know, you see those people on the street. You know, you see those things in those movies, and the aging and the changes, and what were some of the side effects that you were dealing with?
For me, I got very paranoid, but you know, it ate away at my teeth, and it's deteriorated my body, you know, and things that accidents from when I was a kid, when I was, you know, almost paralyzed hitting an oak tree, that's catching up with me much faster now because my body, I broke it down, not sleeping for days on end and taking chemicals in my body. And so my tissues and my bones and my body are, you know, I'm feeling it much earlier in my life than maybe I would have if I did not do 10 years of meth. So it breaks your body down.
10 years is a long,
Yeah.
long time. What actually is meth?
Meth they call it crystal meth. They call it many different things, but it's it looks like glass, and what it does is when you take it, it releases endorphins and different things in your brain. And
Wait a minute. Glass? You eat glass? You got to explain this to me a little more in
Okay.
detail. I am the naive one here.
Yeah.
So teach me what meth is.
well, meth it's a component. Really, methamphetamine is a component of chemicals put together that if you were to take them, any chemical by itself, before they make it and do what they do with it, each component would pretty much kill you by itself. And so what they do is they take it through a process that they do, and then when it comes out, it can look like chalk. It can look like glass. There's many different ways that it comes out looking like, but the end result is it amps you up, and it sets you on this high that will last from 6, 8, 10, 12 hours, and then you don't want to come down, and you just want to stay high. And if you continue to stay high, then you start losing, you know, you've lost so much sleep, you start losing your mind, in a sense. You start getting paranoid. I mean, there's just so many things that it's really, I call it the devil's dust.
Wow. Devil's dust. Those are big words, but I could totally
Yeah.
see. And then you just inhale it, you smoke it, you inject it.
They do all those things, yeah.
All of them.
People eat it.
Wow.
Whatever way that they can do it, they'll do it, you know.
Wow. What were some of the side effects that you personally experienced, except the high blood pressure, you know?
You know, it makes you just somebody that you're not, you know. It takes you into a place where, I mean, things that I know that I would have never done in my life, I did when I was high on drugs. You know, I would leave my boy in bed, you know, and sneak out of the house at my parents' house and steal a bicycle to ride to the drug dealer's house or to get somewhere to get some drugs, and then think I'm going to sneak back in before daylight. I mean, it just makes you think that the rationality is just gone.
Okay, gone.
Yeah.
Wow. So you actually got to the point you felt like such a loser that you wanted to just stop it all. You wanted to commit suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to talk to you about that pretty much in just a couple of minutes, what happened to you to get you to such a low state. And that might be you right now, that you're struggling in life in such a way that you are just done with life. Actually, there was somebody earlier in the show that came here that received a phone call of somebody that wanted to commit suicide today, right that moment, and how God intervened and right stopped it and brought that person to meet this person on the show just to talk to them. And God doesn't see the answer for you to just stop life altogether. He has much bigger plans. Stay tuned and hear Brendan's story. At our Love Life Today events, we inspire, we encourage, and we help people with their needs. It's a great group of networking, building each other up, and bringing guests in and speakers in that are going to be there for you. We'd love for you to join us and to just see real people with real problems, real joys, embracing one another and building each other up. To connect with us and to get to know us better, go to barbtv.org and or call us 855-515-5550. welcome back. And with me is Brendan Stearns, who was so at the point of the end of what he was dealing with and addicted to meth that he wanted to end his life. And according to a survey in 2013, did you know that every 12.8 minutes somebody commits suicide in this nation? That is more than 449,000 people. That is a lot of people, a lot of hurt, and a lot of despair. But I want to tell you right now that here Pastor Brendan with me has the solution that does not have to happen. You went through several rehabs. It was tough. They weren't able to help you. Why not?
Well, I mean, I think that the person has to want it. You know, that's a main part of it. But for me, what I needed was something more, because I was so hooked and so in bondage that it took an act of God to change me. And that's just that simple. It was an act of God. Wow. That changed my life, because I went through 2 or 3 programs. I was losing my family. I couldn't keep a job. I had lost my nice pickup. I mean, you name it, I was losing it. My life was decaying. My family was giving up on me. People had already basically, I was the black sheep in the family. Yeah. And I was burning bridges and making enemies. And, you know, for me, it's just an act of God to change my life.
Wow. Now, a question I have for you. There's a lot of people out there that are in that same situation where you used to be. What would you want to tell the family of those people right now?
Don't stop praying.
Okay.
I had a praying mom that didn't give up on me. She continued to pray over me. She was up at night sick. She owned a business. She would be, up at night throwing up. Couldn't barely make it through life, because waiting to hear I was dead, waiting to know that the report was going to come in that I was going to be dead. But she never stopped praying. So you don't stop praying.
Wow. You actually got to the point that it looks like your mom's prayers are not going to be answered when you go to a mountain and you want to end it and put a gun to your head. Mm-hmm. What stopped it?
The only thing I could say is God. I was actually at my house, went upstairs, got a pistol, was just tired of being tired, couldn't ever win, couldn't ever get on top, was always failing. Took the gun, went outside, wrote a note. My wife and my little boy were in the house, and they were just doing their own thing, and I went out and wrote a note, left my wedding ring on the piece of paper in the garage, and went out and sat on a rock, put the gun to my head, and pictured my mom finding me, and that being the last thing that she saw was her son's head blown off. And so at that point I broke down and just wept uncontrollably, and came back in, and my wife at that time knew something was wrong. She was on the phone with 911, and I came in and threw the gun on the counter, and then told her, hang up, they're going to come arrest me and we have to leave, and so God spared my life.
Wow. I have just God bombs all over me right now. I'm like, God stopped it.
God stopped it.
God stopped it. So do you think everybody that is at that point of suicide, that God gives them an out on that moment?
There's always an out. I think that the enemy makes it so clouded. A lot of spiritual things going on there when somebody's getting ready to take their life. I think the enemy clouds and makes such a despair, and makes it seem like there's just no fix, and that's so far from being true. And they come to that place where they just think that there is no fix. And I think the enemy plays a part in that, the spiritual life of the devil, and how he makes you feel that it's just stop it and just end it. There's no way you're going to pull out of it.
Wow, yeah.
And that's not true.
So you get home, you throw the pistol on the counter, and then what? You're still an addict.
Yeah.
So, you stole things, you did all kinds of things. What was the answer from God for you, how to get you out of meth?
Well, I used to think that if I would have a kid, I would stop. And so that lasted 2 or 3 months when I found out we were having a baby. I used to think that responsibility of a father would change it. I was always looking for something to come in and make that gap for me that would cause me to say, okay, I can overcome this.
Yeah.
Jail wouldn't do it. I was injured so bad, I was kicked in a fight, and my spleen was burst, and I was bleeding internally. Got arrested for an outstanding charge from another city, and they took me to jail and left me in the cell for about 7 hours while I was bleeding internally. And and they finally realized something was wrong with me when one eye was dilated and one wasn't. And they rushed me to the hospital, and I was within 2 hours of death. Bled out almost, somewhere around half of my blood in my body, inside my cavity of my body, bleeding. And spent 5 days in ICU, and within 2 weeks, I was still on blood thinning medication to get my blood restored, had 22 staples in my stomach, and I was right back out running from the police and doing methamphetamine.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
That's just nuts. So what did turn it around? Didn't you get arrested and actually were put in jail for a longer time?
Yes, but right before that, I went out on at the same house where I had almost taken my life on the ridge, and I asked my mom, I said, Mom, I said, would you come outside and pray with me? And we were overlooking all the stars, looking at the stars and overlooking the city. And I said, Mom, if God is who He is, I need Him to help me. And we prayed together, held hands, asked God to come and help me, and we were crying. And I believe the Lord answered that prayer by giving me a prison sentence. He had to separate me from what I couldn't separate from, and that was the crowd, the people, the availability of the drug. And so within months of that, I ended up committing a crime that made me, I believe I was county's most wanted at that time, and it was about 11 years ago today that happened.
After the prayer, you
Yeah.
still went all the way. Wow. So you end up in jail, you have a longer sentence, and then something amazing happens, how God uses what you feel is the worst that could happen to you. While you have a beautiful child, you're married. How did your wife put up with that? But don't answer that yet.
Okay.
We'll cover that in just a moment. I'm sure you want to know what happened next, because did you know that it's known in a statistic they did in Delaware that out of almost every 10 prisoners, almost 8 actually will return to prison after that. So was it enough for Brandon to go to jail or not? We will be right back.
Hi, I'm Bob Meese. I'm on the set today of Barb TV, also known as the Barb Marshall Show. It's a great opportunity for you to watch television that have a meaningful impact on your life. Barb has one guest after another that will come on and show you how you can thrive, how you can live a life filled with the love of Christ. Please join us on Barb TV.
With me is Pastor Brandon Stearns, who blew every part of the possibilities with meth he basically could do and could not get out of it, and then prayed to God, help me. God helped and put him in jail, and then something good came out of that. You're in jail, no meth available. You have to go through the withdrawals. What was that like?
For me, if I could back up just a quick second, when I got arrested that day, I was looking at 12 years in prison. And I just leaned my head against the cop car window and I just said, God, I don't want to be this man anymore. Fix me, I'm done. And he supernaturally began to I really didn't go through withdrawals for the most part.
Wow.
Maybe a little bit for cigarettes, but the desire wasn't there. My life was immediately touched by God. And I just began to tell everybody, I am done with drugs. I know my word is no good. I've disappointed and lied to everybody. I've burned every bridge, and I realize that my voice means nothing. But I'm telling you right now, I am done, and I'm following Jesus.
Only God could make that possible.
Yeah.
And you were done. Because with me, it took me 2 years to overcome it. But God knew if He would heal me instantly, I would go straight back. So for me, that wasn't the answer. But for you, it was. It was the complete answer. So you're in jail. Your wife, at this point, does she still want to stay with you?
No, she was leaving by that time. I gave her 4 years of hell.
Yeah.
I wasn't a good father. I wasn't a good husband. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't provide for my family. I would take the vehicle, the only vehicle we had with the only car seat that we had, and I would tell her I'm going to get milk, and I would be gone for 2 to 3 days at a time. With our only vehicle, I just put this woman that was studying to be a police officer, and a paramedic, and I ruined both of her careers, and so she was done with me. I'm looking at 6 years in prison, looking at 12 years, but they gave me 6 years in prison. So she left, and then God restored us when we came back. When I got out of prison, He
Wow.
restored us.
You get out of prison, you get to know really, what did you do? What do you do in prison?
Well, I made a decision when I got to prison. I told myself, I said, I can either become a better criminal, or I can go to Bible school and change my life. And so what I did was I became a God chaser, and I thought I was going to read the New Testament, and by the time I read through the New Testament, that it was going to be a supernatural womb, that my life would just be changed. And I realized that I had to keep reading and keep reading and keep chasing and keep finding God and going after Him. And so it was a progressive thing for me while I was in prison, until one day God's presence just came on me when I was in DVI and Tracy in my cell, and we were actually sign languaging. I learned how to sign language to communicate. And so we were communicating about God, and the presence of the Lord hit me for the first time, and it set me back in awe. And it was like, okay, this is really, really real. I mean, this is not just real, this is real. And it just was a progression. I ended up having a dream from God one night, and I saw a man standing in front of me. Just a very quick dream. I saw a man standing in front of me. I couldn't see his face, and he had like a brown garment on. And he reached back to me and said, "Follow me, I'll lead you." And he said that 3 times. And when I took a step to follow him, the dream ended.
Wow, that was God.
Yeah.
You get out of prison.
Uh-huh.
Most people end up back in prison because of the incredible pressures. There is something you did that is key importance for those that leave prison. What was it that you did so you didn't go back?
I plugged in. You got to plug into a church. You got to plug into the right people. I did not go back around the wrong people. I went around the right people. God had ordained and set up just divine appointments for people to, my pastor now that's over me was in prison with me, and he's been pastoring for 6 years in Clear Lake.
So you are a pastor today. I think that is the biggest joke on God, to use the worst for you to the very, people leading the people. Isn't that how God works?
Absolutely. And the funny thing is I minister to policemen now and correctional people, and whoever comes in my church, I'll minister to anybody, the lost, the poor, it doesn't matter. God doesn't have a flavor. He wants souls.
So, now you wrote a book about everything that you did. Tell me quickly about that.
The book that I wrote is not so much my testimony. The book is kind of my testimony, but more of my calling.
Okay.
And I wrote the book, and it's really about the intimacy that I had with God and how I learned to get close to the heart of God. And it talks about it's about the prophetic calling and hearing the voice of God. And I wrote it in the idea that I wanted people that carry titles, because pastor, prophet, evangelist, to carry titles, but bring them in because of the title of a prophet, but to minister to them about being a humble servant who just wants to spend time with God and be intimate with God, and really out of the back of the book, leave them as a friend of God's.
Wow, that sounds great. That sounds great. If somebody wants to connect with you or talk to you, do you have a website?
We do. You go to Potter's Touch Copperopolis. You'll find my website. Look up Brandon Stearns on Facebook and send a friend request.
Yeah. Wow, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Pastor Brandon, thank you so much for coming to the show.
Okay, thank you.
Really, really learned a lot from you, and it shows through you that God can do anything.
Amen.
I'd like to give you my book, a copy
you.
of my book, Ransomed.
Thank you.
And thank you so much
Thank you.
for being honest, vulnerable, and
Yeah.
real.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
And that's what we're about. We're about the real deal Christianity, no phony baloney. What is your story? What is it that you are dealing with? And how can you get help? I would love for you to contact me. 855-515-5550, or go to our website, which is barbtv.org. And like I told you throughout the show, I have been there as well. For 17 years, I was struggling, and there was 2 Bible verses that really, really helped me that I want to share with you. The first one was from Matthew 5, verse 3. Blessed are the poor of spirit, for they shall inherit the kingdom of God. What that meant to me was, blessed are those that have blown it, that have wanted to stop their life, that have made huge mistakes that they should have never made, that have divorced their husbands, that hate him with a passion, and that have had an eating disorder, because when they know that God is there and they reach out to Him for help, He will help them. That is what it meant to me. And God helped me from my insanity and restored me completely. The other one is the famous one. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And while I was there that day, when everything seemed to fall apart and everything was out of control, I read that Bible crying with the anxiety, not being able to know what to do. And the person I called told me one thing that day. Who is your God? God Almighty or your eating disorder? You have to make a choice. I made that choice. And God healed me and restored me. Even after I relapsed, He took me back again. And that is what God wants for you. He wants to help you. He wants to restore you. And He wants to reconcile you to Him, just like He did with Pastor Brandon. There is hope for you. Call us, 855-515-5550, or go to barbtv.org. And just know this. You are not alone. There are a lot of people out there that long to help you. And most of all, it's God Almighty Himself that is looking over you saying, I want to help you. Will you let me? God loves you, and so do I. Have a great day.